I think
summarize?
I've said enough. So you're the partner. That's how we see it.
AI should not become another Instagram or any other social media for young kids.
In so many ways, I think Ahmedabad is that melting pot. And then the goal was always to return back. In so many ways, we are like prima donnas. I don't think there's a right or wrong way. One needs to have immense clarity. Instagrammable architecture, I is the king for me. I think my imagination should start from there.
Why architecture? What was that thought behind doing architecture? How this journey?
Everybody has answers, but there are no questions.
Yeah.
There's no escape from that. Look at me, keep advising. Of course, I mean, everybody these days with cell phone cameras is photographer. How to marry them all together. Small, tiny feedback, direct, indirect guidance, and I'll not say advice, the word to stay away from.
Hello viewers and welcome to this episode of The BIM Shift. Today we are at a special office where usually people connect for work and then they develop the connect at a personal level. This office, I feel that I connected with the architect first at a personal level and now we are talking work. So we are at a very special office today. Name of the firm is Swapnil Patil Partners. And like I always say that I consider myself very small or very young to introduce any architect who is practicing for all these years. So welcome architect Swapnil Patil and welcome to the series The BIM Shift.
Thank you, Shivang. So to begin with the name.
Yes, that's my Swapnil Patil Partners.
So you're the partner. That's how we see it. I mean, for us, architecture is not something in isolation. It's always a teamwork and has always been. So the minute we thought that, what the firm needs to be called, we felt that everybody who's working with us are partners. It could be our own team, consultants, contractors, whoever it might be. And that's where the name comes from. So yeah, I mean, you're a partner.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah.
So we all would want to know your experience or rather your journey, to be here, like from your school days or why architecture, what was that thought behind doing architecture, how this journey.
Okay.
So that is like, we are all keen to know that.
Okay, I'll answer that. And I'm also, actually, I'm quite excited because this might be the first time that formally, we are having this on camera, I'll not call it an interview, but conversation with an architect, which is always exciting because, we could very passionately agree to disagree or we could totally agree with each other. So let's see the outcome, how it's going to turn out to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, this is something that it takes me back to my school days. And I've mentioned this umpteen times, that for me, right from as a kid, I must be 12, I was very clear that I wanted to get in architecture because, the school that I went to, the boarding school where I studied, the architecture of that, all that had a very deep influence on me. So it wasn't something, many times we've seen in most of the cases, architecture is taken up as a profession when many of them don't have choice. I don't know the current times, but at least during our times, But for me, I was very clear that I wanted to do this. And as far as journey is concerned, so I did my architecture in Kolhapur. Then, started working at Sangat with Doshi sir. And after working there, eventually went to Berkeley to did my master's in urban design. Then I was in the Bay Area for about 6-7 years. Then eventually moved to Abu Dhabi, where we were working with government of Abu Dhabi on Abu Dhabi Plan 2030. And then the goal was always to return back, to India. And that's another question that comes that, after spending so many years abroad, why did you decide to come back? And for me, the answer was, and actually many of them say that being an urban designer, why did you decide to come back? And for me, that itself is the answer. That I always believed and still believe that as an urban designer, there is a lot that I can do here in my own country than elsewhere, because I don't want to sound negative about this, but that aspect of our city design is completely missing as yet. I mean, there's now um, bits and pieces which is happening all around the country, and I just felt that this is where we could start to make the difference. And for me, urban design wasn't limited only to public realm and to the city planners and the corporations. I believed urban design is an extension of architecture. And as a result, one could easily apply those set of principles, whether you're designing a building or developing a 10-acre master plan, or even interior design. The principles of urban design, placemaking and space making, are universal and stay relevant. So very long answer to your question, but that's how the journey has been. And then about 2015, 10 years ago, came back and started SPAP with a very clear purpose and goal, which was to look at architecture through an urban designer's viewpoint, and be able to do that kind of work. So that's been the trajectory so far.
So you and I have this connect of Ahmedabad. Like,
Yes.
I have also spent my, after graduation, when I started Dimension Plus, I spent good amount of years in Ahmedabad. And in fact, we have another connect, that's Vastushilp, Sangat.
Yes.
Like, I mean, I have also worked with them.
Correct.
I have been Archicad trainer for them, or technology trainer kind of a thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, we have this common connect,
Absolutely.
and we connected after years again. So we were in different times, probably in Ahmedabad, connected to Sangat. But
That's true.
Yeah.
In so many ways, I think Ahmedabad is that melting pot.
Yeah.
When it comes to architecture and design, because my partner and my wife Manali, who's also ex-NID, did her furniture design again in Ahmedabad. So for us, Ahmedabad's always been a place which we've always looked up to. Especially when you come from small towns like Kolhapur or whatever it is, at that point in time, to an extent, it was aspirational, to be able to work in these like big offices, be able to drop by CEPT and ID and whatever it is. So I can see and instantly be connected because of that. Yeah.
And once you started your office here in India, what is even today close to your heart, architecture or urban design?
Always urban design. So there's a very interesting story behind that, and so I'm just going to like tell how it all sort of like unfolded. So when I went to Berkeley, from Sangat Doshi's office, you were kind of used to working in an environment where you had master architect under which you were getting trained, and that kind of tends to change your outlook. I'm being very honest about it, where I mean, the architecture becomes imprint of that person, extension of that person's philosophy, persona, and personality. And with that mindset, I went to Berkeley to do urban design. And the first rude shock that I got was that you have to really kill that architect in you. Because as an urban designer, I realized that it's never about you, it's never about an individual, it's more about the community, and your role and job is to facilitate the process, and the result is outcome of that process, which as architects we are never trained to work that way. In so many ways we are like prima donnas, I mean, we are how do I put it? I'm not known to be a person who puts things delicately, so I'll just put it out that what we lack is intellectual humility in so many ways, if I could say that, because we are smitten by this whole Howard Roark syndrome that an individual can change the world and bring about a change. But for me, Berkeley was that awakening, where I realized that you're just a small wheel in the cog, and that somehow, once you're able to share that mindset, it just opened a whole new world. because from there onwards it was only that, okay, I mean, and that's where this whole partners also comes in, from that philosophy that it's not about an individual, but it's about the enterprise that gets you the result that you're looking for. There are so many hands which work towards it. At the office level it is us, but on the site level and ground level it is every mason and every the smallest entity which is working on that. So in that way, I don't see urban design very different from architecture. So philosophically, I think we practice our brand of architecture in the same way. We start with a very rigorous visioning workshop, which is a process that we carry out for 2 days, 3 days, at times 4 days, in a very structured way. And we insist with our clients that all the stakeholders from their side be part of these workshops. It could be their, if it's a housing project, it could be their marketing person, it could be their sales, or, whichever it is, because we need to know everyone's perspective, when we are developing things. And in that sense, then we want them to be co-creators in the whole process. So that is something that we are doing at SPAP very successfully, and clients have been appreciative of that. Though initially there's always a resistance, but once they get used to the process and they see the outcome, then I think it becomes relatively straightforward and easy. So yes, for me, it's always urban designer that begins this process, and it's always urban designer that looks at the evolution of the design, whether it is architecture, interior, or master planning. It all comes from that same mindset and what I call 30,000 feet birds.
Wider perspective.
Yeah.
Wider perspective.
Yeah.
So, if we look at your journey from Kolhapur to Ahmedabad at Doshi's office, then Berkeley's, then working in States, then coming to Abu Dhabi, and then coming to India and starting your own practice. Throughout this journey, what were your pointers? One thing is partners. What were other pointers that you decided that when you start your own practice, these are the pointers you will follow? Like someone will have pointers like, I will have this kind of practice, or my focus will be on processes also, or these kind of, I don't want to prime you in that. I want to know your views on that.
So it was always, so I'm a firm believer that architecture, as much as one likes to believe, and we are meant to believe it's art, it's also science. And for me, a good building, for me, an iconic building is not important. For me, a good building is a building that should age well, that should be built well, and that should stand the test of the time. Now, when you talk of these three parameters, then it becomes very important that you start thinking partly from an engineer's mind, partly from a consultant's mind, a user's standpoint, because you're not creating it for yourself. As an architect, you're doing it for others. And that is one of the reasons that SPAP, we never do residences, because we feel residence is a very personal expression. And I can't superimpose my view on the user, where I might be liking a black wall and they might not like that. So as an architect, I'm nobody to enforce that. So we kind of stay away from that. But to get back to the question, I think for us, the systems become very important in being able to deliver what we want to do. So when I came back, I think I was very clear that philosophically, the work would come from that urban designer's mindset, but the working will very much be process oriented, will always be very structured, very organized, and it would evolve out of collective effort. So that was something that I was absolutely clear about, because I don't believe in our profession that we are artists, that we can do things liberally the way we want it. There's a huge amount of responsibility financially, in terms of whatever this thing. So every decision that we take, we deal with projects which are very large scale in nature. Hundreds of crores of rupees are involved in that process. So one has to be extremely careful. And for me, the systems and processes is something that keeps us on radar, in terms of being able to deliver.
Okay. So I would also want to know that when you started your practice here in India, what was driving your process? Where was your process BIM driven or 2D plus 3D driven?
No, so fortunately for me, when I was in States, at both my jobs in the Bay Area, Van Meter Williams Pollock, which is actually our partner firm that we collaborate a lot, and WRT, which was the other firm. Both firms had BIM at that point in time. In fact, if I could step back, even at Vastu Shilp Sangat, we didn't have BIM per se, but we had Vectorworks. So the program and the softwares were kind of familiar to me, but I was somebody who never used it. I wasn't used to it because when we did urban design and master planning, these tools were not needed, so we never used it. But I was familiar with these tools. So the whole idea is that when I came back, um, and I really want to credit my ex-boss, Tim Van Meter, who's my mentor, that he really pushed me in this direction, and where he, at a very early stage, told us that because Van Meter Williams Pollock used to use Archicad, and I knew a little bit of it, but I wasn't sure, if we would be able to adapt. But he was somebody who pushed us into that, and then they were kind enough to give some of their resources to us, so James and few people from there, they helped us start on this one, and this is how we started on this journey, of using Archicad and BIM, to be able to deliver that. Because that one thing was very clear, that 2D drafting was not something that I was comfortable and we ever wanted to do that, because that was a very archaic way of doing things. So 10 years ago when we started with a very clear understanding and complete clarity that we wanted to do things in a progressive way, and always try and match our standards to global adaptation or whatever was going on around. So that was very clear.
So this is a very surprising thing that out of all offices I keep interacting with, you are a very special case where you started with BIM from day one. And I mean, today you are saying 10 years with this. So I feel that there is always a difference when you shift from 2D plus 3D fragmented workflow to BIM, or you start with the BIM.
Yeah.
So I feel that probably you have BIM in your vision now, that okay, this is the BIM logic, and
Right.
probably like you said that you are not using the software or technology, but you are understanding the workflow of BIM. So that this is very special thing. I mean, very very rare and unique thing for me, that from day one you are on BIM. So I mean, how would you put it that there are firms who are still not on BIM, they are still contemplating whether they should shift to BIM or not, and you have experience of starting with BIM from day one. So as a process, what is the benefit of starting early than starting late? I mean, one can start after 5 years also. That is, there is no force, or there is no, because this is something which is driven by inner vision or inner drive. So probably one can start after 5 years also, but you started 10 years back from day one when you started your operations in India. So how is it? I mean, what is the right way? Start early and take the benefit, or there is still no time. We still have futuristic technology.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way. I would rather put it this way, that one needs to have immense clarity in terms of how one wants to shape their own practice. And Shivang, for me, that clarity was there from day one. And if I could outline that, what it meant was that we will always be a firm of certain size. And by that I mean, about 8 to 10 people, and never exceed that number. Now, never say never, but at least till now, we've been fairly consistent. And the logic when we started with this was that we are in a service industry. We need to be able to give our own dedicated time and attention, and use our bandwidth on the projects that we're working with. So for me, keeping a tight team was very critical, because that way then you're aware of every project and you give that personal attention on every project. However, if you make that choice, then there are two limitations. Either you will not be able to grow, or you need to increase the team size to grow. So that leaves us with only one choice, which is that if we have to maintain the team composition and size and yet be able to do the kind of large scale work that we do in healthcare, education, master plans, technology is the only answer to that, right? And what do I mean by that is that we need to use technology to do all the repetitive and mundane, boring work, which might be done by the 30 or 40 people staff. And that leaves us with no choice but to adopt BIM. So for us, it really comes from that clarity that what kind of practice we would like to establish and carry out as we move forward. And the base for that came really from this very clear, crisp understanding of how we want to operate. And when now we talk about BIM, then the advantages are kind of this thing. I mean, for me, again, in so many ways, if you think about BIM, people just look at it as a tool to model, clash detection, and drawing. And for me, that is not the only thing. In fact, that is underusing its capability. BIM, in that I is the king for me. What the information is the key to everything. And I look at it as an information ecosystem that can be utilized in so many creative ways. Yes, there is design perspective, but there's engineering which gets captured through that extensive use of information. Environmental factors, whether it is daylighting, whether it is heat loads, or, the cost predictability, the transparency, so many levels that you can use that information. And I think whoever is trying to get into it should really have that holistic mindset and not look at this as a tool just to produce the drawings and be able to do 3D modeling, because that's just one of its capability. I think there are so many areas one could start to look at, and for us, that is what the technology does. So to go back to your question, I think everybody should have that complete clarity in terms of what is it that they want to position and achieve out of their own practice. And that will answer whether they need BIM now or in future or whatever it is. Nonetheless, I think if you ask me for a minute, that's not even a question.
Yeah.
Because 2D drafting and the way the things are done in, like I say, in an archaic ways, those days are gone. And one of the most telling examples for me is the Vista project. Look at that, the amount of work that happened. I would say, not, percentage wise, maybe, it was very little so-called design the way architects understand, but it was engineering, it was urban design, it was like so many aspects which were sort of intertwined, and one could only do that based on the BIM. There was no way you could have done it in a traditional way. So India is growing, we see tremendous growth, and as economy starts to do well, overall urban environment starts to pick up, the new work will start to come in. And if you have to compete, I think it's very natural for us that, we have to adapt to changing times and to be able to do large scale work, without spending those kind of resources.
Yeah. So basically your answer gave a very nice insight to all our viewers, because there is this misconception about BIM, especially in institutes, that hey, I am using Archicad or I am using Revit or I am using Vectorworks, and the benefit of that is you make a 3D model and you cut a section, you get automatic sections. This is where this entire majority of people think that when you do BIM and you can cut sections from anywhere, and usually students don't take it ahead, don't take it further. Sometimes we have seen that BIM is still not part of education. Like I was interacting with one of the architects who is like promoter of BIM should be taught at college, and he raised a very nice point. He's like, even today BIM is part of elective and not the regular curriculum. In regular curriculum it is still 2D CAD. So I mean, what is your message to educators or students about this entire scenario?
So I mean, I'll go even a step further, and I don't want to just limit this conversation to BIM. I'll say technology.
Yeah.
And when I say technology, everything encompasses that, right up to AI. Now, if you think about it, Shivang, in so many ways, today technology is leveling the playing field. During my time, it would take us, for any one of us, 8, 10 years, to really master what you were doing. And what you were doing, essentially, yes, design, but translating that into the drawings. There were people who, for the rest of their career, spent just doing drawings, detailing and excelling at that. I think the younger generation or the newer generation of architects who are graduating or who have graduated really have this huge advantage of technology because it instantly leapfrogs them to that leadership position. So for us, it would take 8, 10 years to get to a level where somebody in the firm would recognize you for your ability, or that you're good at detailing, you're good at making drawings or whatever it is. Here, if you master the technology, it will take care of that for you. And what could have taken you otherwise 8 years, you could do it in a year's time, to really be noticeable and be of value to the organization that you're working for, or your own organization. So, to me, technology is really that huge advantage that the newer generation has, which can really help them, like I said, leapfrog into the leadership position that they would be looking for. Now, that is something that the educational institutes really need to recognize, because if we empower them with those kind of tools, then they would be able to really progress rapidly. Having said that, I'm also very cautious because things like AI are very visual mediums. They stimulate you visually, and then the whole process kind of stops there, that you generate a pretty render or a pretty picture, but then, as Doshi or one of those that generation of architects would question that how do you build this? How will this age? Is it appropriate? Is this context based? So all those things. So the minute I have this visual in front of me, I think my imagination should start from there. My thought process should start from there. And today I'm realizing one thing is that today we are living in a world where everybody has answers, but there are no questions.
Yeah.
Right? True. So, what tools like BIM or AI will allow us to do is free our mind from the production process and be able to use our bandwidth in asking the right questions, in being able to think, how do we go about, what do we do? That moment of pause and reflection. I think if we have these fantastic tools, we can really leverage and use our time on these things, which is, like I said, asking the right questions, being more imaginative, being more thoughtful, and using the technology just to produce it for you. So I think, education needs to definitely adopt itself for changing times. There's no escape from that. And whether it is BIM or AI, I think that is a reality. We just need to figure out ways how to use it in a productive way without compromising what all we do.
Right. And from this, one thing which is very important, which you touched upon, is power of technology to just be visually appealing. So what I feel, I mean, from your, what is my takeaway from your answer or your point is that AI should not become another Instagram or any other social media for young kids. You see something flashy rendered or image created and then you are lost in that process.
Yeah.
Rather, it should ignite your thought process more, that how will I build this? Like Doshi used to ask always, how will you build this? So yeah, that is, I mean, I agree with you that education has to be, using right technology as well as the right thought process, or what you said, asking question. So if right questions are not asked and right technology is not used, they work hand in hand.
Yeah.
So this I agree.
I think the perspective really comes from an urban designer's view, because the Instagrammable architecture is what is going to create a lot of problems for us as we move forward, or as we call Dubai syndrome.
Yeah.
I mean, every building that you see in Dubai is Instagrammable, but just within the frame. You expand the frame and you start seeing every individual object screaming for attention. Look at me, look at me. That's the kind of architecture. So I think when it reaches to that level, it becomes very schizoid and it becomes very confusing in so many ways. So I think we really need architects who can do what I call background architecture. Architecture that does not scream for attention, architecture that just gives you a sense of well-being and feeling really better the minute you step into it, not something that serves as a backdrop for your photographs. I think that's a different kind of purpose. So yes, I mean, Instagrammable architecture is something that we really need to be cautious about as we move forward, because it's kind of getting out of control, the way, and this AI is sort of adding to it, but can't blame AI for it. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a tool, and one has to figure out one's own way of how to use the tool and how to harness the power of that tool in the right way and right manner, because there are so many issues to deal with. I mean, like, look at our context, the rampant urban growth, or I mean, whether it is mental health, or whether it is aging population, our cities, like so many issues that we need to tackle and look at. And as an architect, you can make a lot of difference into these areas. So somewhere I think that vision, tunnel vision, sort of needs to be expanded and looked at in a broader way, and not just like as a visual stimulation.
This brings me to another point which I would want to discuss. Is, you very rightly said that AI is one thing or technology is one thing, and one needs to understand how to use it for the purpose. So my next point which I would want to discuss is, what is more important? I mean, on a scale of 1 to 100, if I give you two things, one is choice of tool and another is understanding the process or making the process, what is, like, where do they stand?
You cannot pick one over other.
Yeah, that's
because
why.
because for me, the process and the systems need to be absolutely clear, and tools are just means to serve that, right? So until and unless your systems and process are not in place, how can a tool be of any use? I mean, until and unless I don't know what I'm going to sculpt and how I'm going to sculpt, my hammer and chisel is useless, right? So I think first we really start to identify, the life cycle of a project, right from that initial sketch conception all the way till execution and handover. How does it go through? And similarly, we need to break down that in studio, how would the process of design development, visioning, right up to the construction documentation, how the entire process works out. And once that clarity is achieved, then these tools can help you to achieve some of those things. So for me, they all are intertwined. It's not like one is important and the other one is less important. They all go hand in hand, and with any one of those wheels missing, you cannot achieve what you're trying to do.
Yeah, right. So, I mean, to take this ahead, what, I mean, from your busy schedule, and I know that you actually really for today also you didn't have time, or rather
No,
you
no,
were
no.
advised not to sit. But what brings you here for this interaction? Like, what was the drive to say yes to have this interaction with us?
So when what you said in the introduction is where it all begins with. I think in the other day at the event, I said the same thing, that with Dimension Plus and what you've been doing, Shivang, is phenomenal, because as an architect, you were, I would say, wise enough and smart enough to choose what you thought was your calling. And I really appreciate and admire that, and I keep advising this all the time to, young architects who come at our office, is that understand what you built for, understand your calling. You know, as an architect, you don't have to do everything. You could be, there could be an area of interest which might really appeal to you, and you could get really better at that. For instance, you could be CAD manager, or you could be, of course, everybody these days with cell phone cameras is a photographer, but during our times we would say architectural photographer. And when I say that, then I'm talking about Ezra Stoller and the likes of those, so that could be your career. uh, Architectural journalism, I remember John Kings used to write this for San Francisco Chronicle, about just housing projects. A very interesting critical overview meant for the common folks to understand, but from an architect's perspective. So that is another career avenue to look at. Similarly, I think you chose what I see clearly as your passion is the systems, processes, and the softwares, how to marry them all together. And I think that's a great way to contribute to the profession as well as the fraternity. Because with due respect, many a times when we are dealing with software vendors and the marketing people, yes, they are driven by the mandate and the numbers and whatever it is, but there's a struggle, for us to communicate our expectations to them because they don't come from the same field. I think with you that becomes very easy, because you yourself is not only an architect, but you worked in good places, and as a result, you are able to understand, the aspirations, the need, something beyond the obvious. That where is this person coming from? And as a result, I see that your organization is able to bring in that level of depth into what is needed. And for us, that was the most appealing thing, to sort of collaborate with you. And the collaboration continues because, we really need these kind of partners, who can aid us, assist us in delivering the best quality output and deliverables to our client. And it cannot happen purely based on our own individual expertise. It needs people like you who are from the industry and who are passionate and who are there to provide a solution, right? So for us, I think that's been the appeal of collaborating with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
My final question to you would be, I would want your input, what we should do better.
I think outreach.
Okay.
Because many of them might not be aware of, your existence or what you do. For that matter, even we were not. I mean, I'll put this on record, for half the time, we just thought that we knew the program, and, you were just vendors who provided the program, and we were doing things on our own. So it's my frank feedback that somewhere I think what you offer as part of the process and handholding was something that should have gotten communicated to us earlier. And that is something that if people come to know that these are not software vendors, or these are just not the guys who sell software, but these are somebody who will help you build the systems in your place. I think that will make it really worthwhile and easy for you, and which we've started to do that. But yes, I mean, that's my only small, tiny feedback, and which is like, create a robust outreach. Let people know that you there, you exist, and you exist for this particular purpose.
Thank you for this. This entire series, the BIM Shift, is for that purpose, that we want to have outreach. We want to let people know that processes are important. We are not talking about softwares here. We are talking about processes and passion. So, I mean, that is what that was the concept behind this series, not a usual question answer, or not a usual what you like in Archicad or what you don't like in Archicad. I mean, everyone have their likes and dislikes. You will like some tools, your team will like some other tool in the same software, some other company will like some other tool in the same software. That is not the point. The point is, what is your passion? What is, and how we help you get there better, faster, and with less effort. And you very rightly said that, getting more time to think, ask question, and design. So this is what all Archicad user community keeps telling me, that after switching to Archicad or understanding the entire process, they get more time to take design decisions. And you also added this with the other concept, is asking right kind of question. So probably that is what we have been doing, and with this series it will help us to reach more. Now, to sum up today's session, I would say it was about three things: vision, clarity, and process. So sir very rightly said that these three things are important. Once you need to have vision, then you need to have clarity, like this is my vision, but this is my clarity, how to do it, and the process. Would you want to add something more to this?
I think I've said enough.
Thank you for your time.
Good luck to you and your team. And thank you for having me over. I think it was fun conversation, and I'm glad you didn't ask the questions that you said just 2 minutes back you would ask, because then this conversation would not have lasted
I know.
so long.
I never ask those questions.
Right.
I can never do that. I can never follow a script.
Yeah. So that's great. I think I really appreciate it. And, keep doing this. What the fraternity really needs is dialogue. It needs conversation. And even though I said outreach, I think it's very important for, people to talk about the future of our profession, how we go about, and a lot of youngsters need direct, indirect guidance and I will not say advice, that's the word to stay away from, but sharing our own experiences, about how to do things and what are we going about it. So I really appreciate this little chat.
Yeah.
Yeah? Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Welcome.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.